Hello, this is Barney Cargile with your encouraging word for today on Saturday, April the 11th. And our word for today is rock. You know, this weekend we're remembering the death and resurrection of Jesus. And it's a powerful time. The death of Jesus reminds us of his love for us. He sacrificed himself for us. He will do anything for us. And the resurrection reminds us of his power. That if Jesus could overcome death and rise from the dead, there is nothing that he cannot do. He can back his claims up. Now, maybe you think, well, okay, that's great, but here we are in this crisis right now. That was something that happened 2,000 years ago. What's that got to do with me today? I'll tell you, it's got everything to do with our lives today, because what that shows us through the resurrection is that when Jesus says something, we can know that it's true. He backed his claims up by rising from the dead, for goodness sakes. You know, in Matthew chapter 7, Jesus said this at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. He said that if you hear my words and obey them, you're like a man who builds his house on a rock. And when the storms come through, that house stands because it's on a rock. And he says a man that doesn't obey his words, doesn't, do what Jesus said, he's like a man who builds his house on the sand. And when the storms come, it's going to get washed out to sea. Now, the house there represents our lives. And what he's saying is if you build your life on anything, if you base your life on anything of this world, you're going to get swept away. But when you build your house on Jesus, you can't be shaken. We can know that what Jesus says is true. When Jesus says, I am with you always, even to the end of the world, we can know that's true. You mean he's with us in the midst of coronavirus and being out of work? Yes. And he proved it to the resurrection. When Jesus said, I've come to give you an abundant life, he proves it by rising from the dead. When Jesus said, do not worry about tomorrow, tomorrow will take care of itself, we can know it's true because we are standing on the rock when we build our lives on Jesus. Now, I know that there's a lot of fear right now. A lot of people are afraid of the coronavirus. And then you have the other extreme where people are just angry because they say it's getting blown way out of proportion. And it's really not that big of a deal. And the feelings range all the way through. And I'm just here to say it doesn't really matter in one sense. I'm not trying to minimize it, but here's the deal. If you build your life on Jesus, the storms aren't going to shake you and take away your confidence and the power that Jesus has and he gives to us. And anything else we build our lives on, we're building it on the sand. If you build your life on our economy, if you build your life on your job or your retirement, or if you build your life on on the government, you're building it on sand. Years ago, we have a beach in our area called Doran Beach, and this has been many years ago. Right after we moved here, we went to Doran Beach for the day, and they had a sandcastle building contest. And I got to tell you, these were amazing sandcastles. There was one of the Eiffel Tower, there was one of the Golden Gate Bridge, there was one of Candlestick Park with all the little seats. And it was just like, they blew me away. These things are incredible. But guess what? They're made out of sand. And no matter how superficially they may look, when the tide comes in at the end of the day, guess what's going to happen to them? They get washed out to sea. And the same thing's true if we build our lives on anything other than Jesus. It doesn't matter how it looks on the outside, it's going to get washed away at the end of the day. Build your life on Jesus. He's the solid rock. Meditate on that this weekend, how much power he has to do what he says. And you cannot go wrong, no matter how things appear on the surface. And that is my encouraging word for today.